The fuck?
Parte del pieno, rete del pieno! Pallone con i contagini per Becker, gol! Pirlo, la conclusione in rete! Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del pieno, gol! Pogba, rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
Welcome all to episode 356 of the Turin Giants podcast. My name is Zach, and I'm joined by my best friend in the world, Frederic. Today we're going to cover everything to do with the surprising, maybe undeserved, maybe, but relieving victory of Juventus over Atalanta and Bergamo. And I think since it's just the two of us and I'm wearing my Scoop shirt, maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to coax out some transfer updates and rumors and so forth from our good friend Frederic after our post-game analysis. But before we kind of get into all the rest of the stuff, Frederic, it's been a minute. How you doing?
I'm very well. I'm sorry. I'm baffled by the beard, I must say. It's such an amazing sight. Like it's no. This is the beard that will lead us to qualification in Champions League. Until we get that officially in, I vote for a not shave or trim or whatever.
So somebody mentioned it in the comments to our last video, and I said that I will not trim it until Juventus lose or they fail to win. So as long as Juventus keeps winning, much to my wife's chagrin, I will continue to grow this bad boy out. So that's my commitment to all of you and to myself. I really was sad to miss Beppe with you, Frederic, on Thursday. I was supposed to be there. Work obligations got in the way, but that I now get you all to myself today. So just real quickly before we get into the post game, this is live, and I want to thank everybody who's already messaging a lot in chat. A lot of names that are familiar to us: Ahmad, Del Piero, Pinu, Osama, Mitch, Sebasono, Juve since 95. And I don't want to miss anybody. And Bianconeri. Thank you all. Anyone else listening who hasn't commented, appreciate all of you. For those listening after the fact, whether it's on YouTube, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we appreciate all of you as well. If you can slap some 5 stars, some likes, some comments, and all of the stuff, that means a lot to us. Okay, let's get rid of the housekeeping and let's get to brass tacks. Frederic, we're going to start off with this. Did Atalanta lose this game, or did Juventus win?
It's a bit of both, actually.
All right, give it to me. Well, let's start with the Juventus. How did we deserve this victory through our play?
I don't think so much throughout our play because we all witnessed the first half and that was dramatic. We'll get into that later on. But I think we deserved it because every once in a while, when you're competing for a certain objective, you just need things to go your way. Even if you don't deserve it, even if it's not merited, even if it's not, because you're the better team or whatever, you just need that little bit of extra topping on top to, get you over to the other side. And this is what we've been lacking, or we haven't gotten in a lot of games, be it VAR, be it, ourselves shooting in the foot or conceding too many goals too easily. And these were all factors that came into play today. And that's what I think, helped churn out this amazing yet dirty and maybe undeserved win, in my opinion.
So now give it to the other side. I mean, James here and a lot of people in the chat are agreeing. Ugly win, but so important. from the other side, Atalanta, I mean, they had their chances, right? I mean, they had every opportunity, 22 shots, right? We have been kind of on that side of the equation a lot in
Yeah,
our time. The 22 shots, you can't
yeah,
score, or you just draw. It was that first half, right? They had the opportunities and they just, I don't know, they kind of pulled a Juve and they
yeah,
squandered
yeah,
it.
yeah. It was a spitting image that we saw, a couple of games back and a couple of games this season. And in all fairness, they should have been up 3-0 in halftime. They had three amazing open opportunities to score. They failed to do so. And what happened for us in the past where we didn't score, and we got bitten in the ass at the end, happened to Atalanta today. And I'm very happy because for once we're not on the conceding end and we're not, having yet another therapy session due to that fact. So I'm very happy that we pulled out this dirty win, but I think we need to remain critical because there's still a number of games to go. Nothing is set in stone yet. My biggest aggravation today was especially the mentality and Spalletti.
Well, let's talk about that because I want to give you a few statements from the first half because I think what you're going to talk about mostly is the first half, how we came out to play, how we did play that first half. Because the second half we came out with the desire, we scored the goal. First half, ready?
Yeah.
Despite 56% possession, the bottom three in touches out of the 22 players on the pitch were our front three. Despite 56% possession, 60% of our passes were in our own half.
Yeah.
And despite Boga being the number one traveling in distance traveled in the entire game in the first half, he had the fewest touches on the pitch. I mean, I think
Yep.
these to me were sort of indicative statistics of how poor we were in the first half to have any sort of control over the game and or forward movement.
Yeah. Yeah. We
What
were.
do you attribute that to?
I think two things: the formation lineup itself. Spalletti was trying to mimic Atalanta's formation a bit. I feel was basically the spitting image of Atalanta. It didn't work out for us. You had Yildiz and Boga tripping over each other's feet whenever they were near each other, and the same could be said from Cambiaso and Holm in the first half. It was too dense, and it was too frantic. It was too frantic. When we played a bit more focused, concentrated, and a bit more calm, you could see that we suffered less. We allowed them to pressure us, and every time we gained possession, we panicked and didn't know what to do with us, resulting in us giving the ball back to them. And it was kind of this endless loop of having possession once in a while, playing it out through certain channels, and then just going overboard or just mentally checking out and just handing it over back to them and getting very riled up whenever they were pressing us. And they did that exceptionally. The way that Atalanta pressed us, had to say, hats off to them because that's physically draining and exhausting. And we suffered a lot from it. And I was kind of a bit disillusioned by the fact that Spalletti didn't change things sooner in the first half because we could have been down 3-0 easily.
Yeah, I think the first half subs are risky. I think he rolled the dice on keeping the team together. He believed in what he had put forth, and ultimately he did benefit. But I think it was more luck than tactical brilliance. I don't know if he needed to change the players, but maybe the positioning or how they were playing. Because with the press from Atalanta, we very easily got the ball from our defense into our midfielders. But with the formation we were playing, the two midfielders versus having McKenney in there as a third, they were very isolated and they could not find space, just the two of them, to look upfield and distribute. This is very notable in Locatelli, who that's what he wants to do, is he wants to pick up his head and distribute long. So whenever the midfielders would get it, they had to pass back. And that I think was more so Atalanta imposing their will on our team,
Yeah.
and Spalletti maybe again, not maybe with subs, but maybe changing how he had Yildiz maybe drift into the central position as a number 10 to just help that build up play, or something could have helped or would have really benefited us a lot, because the midfielders by themselves were just getting overrun by the press.
Yeah, and it's good to highlight the importance of McKenney. He is the glue in our midfield, even though he's often not playing within the midfield itself, or is a part of that three-line midfield or whatever have you. It's the glue that holds that together, and that's why I was kind of disappointed in Spalletti, because he once again, after the game in Naples, he once again, tries this false nine, shadow striker, center forward kind of hybrid thing. And if you have the players to do so, then it could benefit you. But, Boga is not that type of player. Boga is definitely not the type of player. And especially in that position, he doesn't gel well with Yildiz. So you take both determining players out of the equation even before starting the game. And I felt that was the second mistake Spalletti made this season for me, or the most blatant one, the Napoli away game and this one, in my opinion.
Sebasono says that there were people making runs. The midfielders weren't just lifting their heads up. I think the biggest moment for me, and I agree with this statement, I think the biggest moment for me was 18 minutes in, Cambiaso made a run, was not covered, made a run all the way through, the uncovered. The ball comes out to Thuram. Thuram's head's down. He passes it back. And I think this has been a Juventus problem for 2 years. Mota didn't really want the long ball, and under Tudor and Spalletti, not too many of our players really looked to play it except for Locatelli on any regular basis. I think today, though, is less about that and more about the press, because you get the ball, you can't immediately make long balls. You have to have the vision, but you also have the space. And I think with just two guys in the midfield, and correct me if you disagree, Frederic, I think with just two guys in the midfield too often, Atalanta was on them like white on rice in a paper plate in a snowstorm. There was no room but to go back.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the issues that Juventus this season has been having. If our midfield doesn't work out, be it due form or due to formation issues, or the interchange of the strikers or whatever, then we really have a big problem. And it's not that this is the greatest Atalanta side in history, because they got 7 goals handed to them by Bayern Munich. So this is not one of those Rocky versus the underdog moments. This is a team that offensively can have its day, but this is a team that, to me, defensively can concede a lot. Kind of the spitting image of Juventus in that respect. So you'd expect a bit more from our midfield, or at least pre-game you'd expect something a bit more, and have some of those certainties built in, because that's where they're gunning for. They're that they're coming for your throat, especially in midfield. And it felt like a kind of rookie mistake by Spalletti. So yeah, I'm a bit between two ferns at this point.
So we go in at halftime, and I have so many notes of how angry and cranky I was at our play. But we come right out. We get a spell of possession. Like, I think the first time all game where we actually have some semblance of control in their half. And let's kind of build up to that goal. You have a really nice give and go with Chico to Boga to get in that forward that forward movement. Boga ends up not being able to get an end of it. Atalanta does kind of a poor clearance. And then Holm, who we have not seen a lot of, and certainly have not had the opportunity to talk a lot about, comes in, uses his big frame, physically overpowers his counterpart, puts in a cross that Carnesecchi absolutely, I don't know if he was pulling out because of the defender in front of him or because of Thuram making that forward run. But either way, Carnesecchi pulls out of that challenge, leaving it to Boga, who at several times this year has made that sort of poacher's run or positioning and poke the ball home.
Yeah, awful goal.
Awful goal, but it's a goal. And
it's a goal nonetheless.
And it's a goal by Boga, who is just continually showing. I mean, up to that point, I told you he had the lowest amount of touches in the game,
Yeah,
but he
yeah,
gets that one sniff. And you've begged for the last 2 years, Frederic, for a striker. Obviously, we all want Trezeguet, but like Trezeguet in the sense that he could be absent for 75
yeah,
minutes.
yeah,
But then he comes in with the moment of brilliance, and we win. I mean,
yeah.
is that the case that you saw from Boga today? Is showing up at the right place at the right time, or was it just we just got super lucky?
And credits where credits due. I think Boga is an amazing player, especially if you put, you consider the cost and the return on investment equivalent, which we tend to do because we're the editors of the scoop. So it's a bit, built into our DNA. But if you just look at the player holistically, I think he certainly is an asset. He shouldn't be a starting player for Juventus's grandeur in terms of we should have better people to start games. But here we are with half the team out and a lot of people injured or not in shape, and I think he does that very well. He grabs his opportunities. He always tries to be attacking minded in the sense that you could always sense danger coming off of him, especially with those little 1-2s and those touch and goes that he kind of he accelerates the game with it. You could see it today again. A lot of times he did it with Conceição, with Thuram a couple of times, with Yildiz. So for me, he's an asset. There's no discussion about that. And also, the kind of underdog redemption arc that we all love, that's manifesting in front of us. So at the 4.8 million euros that we need to cash out for him, I'd say, June 31st, I want this done, signed, and the ink dry already, in my honest opinion.
June 31st. What is this, leap year for June?
It, 30, yeah, sorry.
I kid. So Holm, not only did he, impose his will to win that ball back and put in that cross that scored, but he also, he outbodies Kolasinac, who's like a refrigerator out there. I mean, that's a big dude, to then
That's a big
deliver another beautiful ball to Mr. Shooting Boots, Thuram himself. Now we're going to pause and not talk quite about the shot. But are we seeing that, Holm is maybe a serviceable backup that we might try to negotiate a lower fee on at the end of the year with Bologna? Or do you still view this as we did when we saw the 18 million euro or whatever it was purchase price? Is this largely a dry loan effectively a dry loan in your mind?
I think we'll try something, especially if he keeps this up. And don't forget, Spalletti really, really likes him. Holm was the first name that he mentioned while talking about winter transfers. So it's somebody, who has the respect of Spalletti. And today I think we saw why, not because of his tactical ingenuity or whatever, or technical ingenuity, but the fact that, it's all heart. It is all heart. The guy just keeps running, keeps pounding, keeps trying, keeps going. And defensively, I don't like him that much. I know you've seen him a lot in the past, and you said that he's a solid defender. So I'm really, rooting for you in a sense that I trust your judgment on that. But I wasn't convinced in the past. But I had to say that today he was very, very, very solid, both offensively and defensively. And I like the fact that he was better as a whole in the second half when he tried to play more offensively as well. You could see that he was, I don't know what it was. Was it the formation? Was it Atalanta's pressure that he was holding back in the first half? But the minute he started, going and trying to be a bit more or have a bit more impact offensively, the whole team started to gel and turn a bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the team was just so pinched in that first half because of our inability to stretch the pitch. Holm has always been decent going forward. In a lot of ways, he's very similar in effect to João Mario. There's about a meter difference in height.
Yeah.
But he wants to go forward. He wants to create chances. He has a pretty good record for goals and assists, and he wants to do that. Playing in a 3-4-2-1 is probably suits him better than actually a four-man back. But we were so pinched in that first half. The second half, especially scoring immediately, in part due to his contribution, forced Atalanta to create spaces that they didn't want to create. And that allowed him to stretch his legs a little bit. His weakness, in my opinion, has always been his defensive side of the game, which is surprising for such a big guy. I think if he can clean up some of that, because we know Spalletti doesn't want to play with a 5-man back, then I think, if you can negotiate a cheaper price, we might be seeing Holm around next year. And I'll say this real quickly, because again, we are live. A lot of people in the chat, and I've been flashing up real quick. I know I haven't been doing it for long, but lots and lots and lots of positive feedback with regards to Holm's contribution today, which is nice. Now, real quickly, we talked about Boga, then we talked about Holm. These are notably one, the winter editions for Juventus. Two, the two players who combined on the goal, right? Three, are they, if I'm not mistaken, both former Atalanta players?
Yeah. True.
Okay. So who do we credit for bringing them in win? Are these Ottolini? Are these Spalletti requests? Are these Comoli? Who should we credit with bringing these guys in?
I think this is a team effort because Spalletti had a certain archetype kind of players that he wanted to bring in. And I think you mentioned Holm by name. Of course, then it's up to management to see if it's feasible, doable, whatever. But, credits to them because Holm was somebody who gained a lot of minutes in his former club. And they were a bit reluctant to let him go on loan. So that was a team effort, in my opinion. And Boga, I hate to say it, but that was one of the names that Comoli was having in his head already since September, October. Of course, Ottolini went to look a couple of times, and then they had some serious discussions. And this is the thing that makes me happy. You have two players who don't cost a lot, who helped your team grow in a big way, especially in games like today. But instead of just looking at the technical aspect or the teams that they're playing for, you decide to look at what they can offer. And Boga, we know, was somebody who came from, a very dark place in his career at that point. And you handed him revenge on a silver platter, knowing full well that he's the type of player that would grab it with both hands. So he would be an added value. You couldn't lose. It was a win-win situation. The same can be said for Holm, even though he doesn't have as many minutes under his belt yet with that unfortunate injury. But we knew that he was very injury prone.
Yeah. We called it in the scoop review.
Yeah. And this is maybe the only thing that's bugging me lately, because if you do decide to continue and go forward with Holm, and you'll have to spend something. It's not going to be 18 mil, but it's not going to be 800,000 either. Then you still have that injury-prone aspect. But apart from that, you have two guys who want to be at Juventus. Boga was happier than ever. We saw it, when he signed, like he was over the moon with the opportunity that he got. And Holm is a Juventus supporter since he was a kid. So it makes sense to put them in that position, in this team, in this space of time, in all honesty. And you need a bit of luck and you need things to work out and whatever, like in every transfer. But they looked more at the person than the player itself, and they kind of took that within their evaluation of giving the go ahead, yes or no. And I like that. I honestly do.
Real quickly, to address Mohammed's point, he says that the same team effort brought David Openda-Shagrova in the summer, and that's incorrect, because they were still building their team at that time, and that was also, I think, a level of urgency due to the financial constraints. Would you agree with that? Without going to, unless you disagree, I think we.
No. I wholeheartedly agree. Also, I just want to say the only Comoli transfer in the Comoli era was Openda, which seems to be a mistake, but
seems to be.
If he, well, he still has time to make amends. So I don't want to spark that debate. We'll see what happens August 31st, 30.
What was I going to say? Oh, as we're about Boga's biggest weakness was his ability to convert chances. He has only had 2 seasons in his he's 29 or 30, right? He's only
Yeah,
had 2 seasons in his entire career where I think he's had more than 5 goals or 5 or more goals,
correct. Yeah,
which is really, really low for a dribble happy, high flair winger. So when we signed him, we did that scoop review. We were like, we don't know what he can bring, but he's having one of the best seasons or stints in his career with us right now. And if he's able to maintain that, or he's demonstrating to us that he's cured the weakness in his game, which makes his 4.8 million euro signing a no-brainer. Holmes, he's got 2 big weaknesses. One, his defending, which as a defender is somewhat concerning. We already have Cambiasso who struggles in that position, defending. And Holm has an injury, has a pretty bad injury history. And
yeah,
so like Boga is a no-brainer for me, but even if they say, 10 to 12 million euro for Holm, I'm hesitant because if you get an injury prone defender who can't defend, I don't know if that makes us better, even if he accepts it as a backup position. And so I
yeah.
think Holm has to finish this season really well for me to say that I think we should be aggressive to retain him
Yeah. Also,
personally.
given the fact that we were highlighting his offensive acting today, which was very good, but that's also due to the fact that there's a bit of lack thereof in the team as a whole. I mean, if somebody's starving for 2 weeks and you hand him a cracker, then he'll treat it like he's having lots lobster and caviar, so to speak. And that's the position that we're in at this point. Like, we don't have anyone to churn out assists or be a bit, a bit more demanding and a bit more pressing on the side. And Holm is doing just that. So it makes him seem maybe a bit better than what he in reality is, because if you stick him to that right back position, and you'll have to count on him to defend all game long, and especially in Champions League when you get the better teams and you're in away games, you'll need to do so, and that's where he usually fumbles the ball a bit, and it depends on the alternatives and who you can bring in to make up for the lack of assists and threat on that side. So it's certain a story that'll be continued throughout the summer. Yeah.
All right, we're switching back to the game. We're kind of all over the place. Usually, I'll just be honest with everyone. Usually, we've got a nice, clean outline to talk through. Today, we're just having a conversation between friends because it's
Yeah.
us two. You had mentioned Spalletti before, and we specifically talked to him about him with regards to the first half. But let's talk second half. We come out, we get the goal, and I think that there's 2 things in the second half you see about a coach. What is the reaction? Okay, the reaction was we get a spell of possession, we score a goal. So that I don't think there's much debate there. That's a positive. The second thing you talk about is subs. So the first sub is in the 58th minute. Yield is subbed off for David. Boga then shifts out back to his natural position. The 70th minute, Gatti and Koop on for Holm and Thuram. 79th minute, Miretti Kostic on for Chico and Cambiasso. What did you make of the subs, their impact, and sort of the time that they were brought on? Was it the right time? Was it the right people? And did they have the impact that you wanted them to see?
I was really happy that Spalletti brought in subs earlier, because the last couple of games he's been waiting far too long, in my opinion. He didn't do that today. The first 2 were a bit logical in that respect, and I have to agree with Alex Boston as well. We actually have a shitty bench. It's really, you bring in subs to determine a game, or to get the game pulled in your favor or something, and it's very difficult to do so with these players. You have to admit, and you have to give Spalletti a bit of leeway here and there, because it's not the difference between mediocre players for us that start. There are starting players and bench players is huge. So without me delving into names and saying what I think.
But no, we're going to get into names. No, we're going to get into names. You're not going to escape.
No, okay. Well, the first 2 I thought were justified, because Holm was he doesn't have any match rhythm yet. It's logical that after such a ferocious game on his part, both defensively and offensively, he's down and out at that point. So you need to bring somebody else in. Yildiz, I would have subbed him like after 20 minutes already. I think what Yildiz is putting on the pitch since his contract renewal is
But he wasn't fully fit, was he?
subpar.
I mean, Yildiz wasn't fully fit, was he?
Yeah, but we've been hearing this like all season. Once it's fatigue, then he's not fully fit. Then it's the knee. Now he just keeps the tape on the knee because he thinks it brings good luck. But everybody says, "Oh, look, it's Yildiz trying to play injured." He's not injured. This week he was. He had a bit of a knock on Monday, I think, and he still had some, kind of aches here and there. But as a whole, if you look at the last, shall we say, 4 to 5 games, he's been subpar. And I think a message needs to be sent that your place on this team needs to be earned, regardless of the competition you have on that place, and regardless of your name and the amount of the paycheck that you're getting every month. So I felt that it was a right call to sub him for that point, even though you lose a bit of creativity. And
Well,
that
you
was
you
also
you presumably would have the same amount of creativity moving Boga into that position with a little bit more central presence in David, because he'll drop deeper to help build up, where Boga just stays on the back defender the whole time. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
theory.
In theory, yeah. And that's why I could also see David coming in, because it was a substitution that he had to make. And we all knew that Milik wasn't going to last more than 20 minutes if he got a spot. So I think that was the right call to make as well. Thuram, I wholeheartedly agree, especially after that chance that he missed. And Spalletti went full freak mode. He was kicking, tearing. We have these microphones right next to the pitch. I don't know if you get those in US, but you can basically hear the conversations and the shouting and whatever. And yeah, he was livid. And they have a good understanding between the both of them, but that was like the final straw this game, because that should have been the 0-2 to us, and that would have sealed the deal.
It would have been over. It would have been over.
It
I
would
mean,
have been
because
over. So
let's see, when was that chance?
I think it was
Thought
a
I had my note. Thought,
68
thought
or something.
it was right before the sub, so it had to
Yeah.
be somewhere around that. Oh yeah, 67th minute. Oh,
Uh,
oh my gosh, like that. Yeah, that would have sealed it. So
And
you said the yield is the Holm, the Thuram subs made sense at the that they got subbed off at the time, and I think Chico and Cambiasso with the 79th minute, that made sense too. Cambiasso was doing nothing, and it was probably set to get a card soon, and Chico was out of legs. Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. Now the players they brought in, David, you said made sense. Did Gatti and Coop make sense for Holm and Thuram?
Well, for home, you don't have any valid alternative, I think. You just
Agreed.
don't. So, I mean, there's no sense of he had no choice, and I think it was a good move. You could see that Holm was spent.
Mhm.
So, given the lack of options, you couldn't have done anything else apart from bringing in Gatti, who didn't have the bad minutes that I thought he was gonna have, because Gatti's been really up and down this season.
Yeah.
So I was kind of, fearing that, but it turned out okay. The only issue I have is with the Koopmeiners and Miretti substitution.
Can I give you a couple Koopmeiners stats for today?
Oh, please,
Are you ready for
please.
this?
Oh,
So,
I'm holding on for dear life, my
Well,
friend.
the first one's going to be a question. Okay.
Okay.
So Koopmeiners comes in the 70th minute. And I want the chat to respond to this too, so I'll let it sit out there for a second. So he comes in the 70th minute. In what minute did he get his first touch?
I think I'll have to take the good old glasses off for this one.
Coop came in the 70th minute, and in what minute did he get his first touch?
75th.
And as Alex Boston says, he only had 6 touches for the games. That was the second stat I was gonna. That was the second stat I was gonna give you. In 26 minutes, He
Holy
has 6
fucking shit.
touches.
Holy fucking shit. Like,
So
can
here we
you
go. Hold on.
understand?
AVS says the 76th minute. Ahmad here we go. I'll flash him up. Ahmad Sako says 83rd. Sebasono 86. Pino also says 86. Mitch says 85th. Our chat's more so on the line of, I think you said 75th or something. They're more in his first touch, which led to a touch where he lost the ball, by the way, was in the 80th minute. 10 minutes. One of our 2 midfielders does not touch the ball, and his first touch is a displacement. So okay, so I just wanted to jump in with that, and as Ahmed Zako and Alex Boston said in chat, 6 touches in 26 minutes. Now proceed with your evaluation of Coop, Frederic.
I don't think there's much to go on. I think that we've said it all. It's I've been repeatedly saying this for a couple of months now. The story between Juve and Koop is done. There's no coming back from this. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I think, with all due respect for Koopmeiners, we tried. Spalletti moved him over to the back position, eased him back into that midfield position where he maybe played a good game against Galatasaray. I think that's the only one I can, wrap my head around.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest were very, very poor to mediocre at best. So what more is there to say? And the same can be said for Miretti as well, because that was the thing I heard through the on-field mic that Spalletti was talking to Miretti and literally told him, I need you to come in hot, in the sense that I need you to be more of a determining factor when you come on. I need you to do a lot better than you did Monday. Literally. He said that literally to Miretti. And then he comes on and he repeats in photocopy the same effort, the same performance, the same SpongeBob SquarePants look out of his eyes that he has been giving us on Monday. Now, if your coach brings you on, no, but we're gonna zoom out a bit and we're gonna go into football brain for a second. And your coach says to you, I'm gonna give you another chance above all the other ones that you received, but I really need you, for the love of God, to do a bit better, as opposed to the kind of stunts you pulled the other games, because this is your get out of jail free card for me. This is me, using those images to go to the board and say, I can work with this guy. Just give me a bit of time extra and whatever. And Miretti just goes, fuck it. He just goes, I don't care. I'll go on and no. Inertia, no. Passion, no. Movement, no. I mean, how can you be so stupid as a player? I'm not talking about quality. I'm not talking about technical ability. This is sheer stupidity, because your coach tells you, I need you to get that performance in for a grander scheme of things that need to be done over the summer. And you just go, meh, fuck him. Like, then all of a sudden when Juventus tells you, yeah, we're going to loan you out, we're going to sell, you go like, but why? How so? Like, there's no EQ, IQ, there's no
cues.
These are players that, even just, they have no value in this Juventus team. Even in this specific Juventus team, Miretti is not good enough to play garbage minutes.
Well, 2 things. One, the fact that this version of Koopmeiners is ahead of him on the depth chart says something. And 2, I'm pretty sure his most notable contribution today was getting near Jim City, who sneezed on him and Miretti got thrown to the ground. I'm pretty sure that's the biggest.
I started.
It's just, I don't know how a professional footballer is that slow and that weak. And I've said this for 3 years from Miretti. It's baffling to me now at 23 years of age. he has no strength, he's got no balance, he's got no speed, and not
I,
just me. And I don't want to hate on him. It just shows to me, and I think the conclusion, he's just not Juve caliber.
it's just facts. I mean, and I'm gonna say it how it is. I have no cartilage in my knees anymore. I have the physique or the stamina of an 80-year-old with emphysema on his lungs. So, but if I were to play against Miretti today, tomorrow, I'd break him mentally in 3 minutes. Miretti comes on, he's your opponent. You give him a big push or a nasty kick, and he just doesn't do anything anymore because he's like fragile as you know. He's I, I'm at a loss for words.
All
Get
right,
him out, sell
yeah,
him.
yeah. I mean, he's probably going to leave over the summer. We've mentioned that on the scoop, that he's
Yeah,
probably a guy that will be able to get 15 to 20, hopefully, and then call it a day. Um, let's talk about the last sub, Kostic. Okay, so well, actually, we skipped David. We'll do David last.
yeah.
You kind of gave us your opinion on how Gatti did better than you thought. Coop, Miretti, Kostic. Now, Kostic this year has generally come on and put in a good short shift, but today I think he struggled.
Yeah, yeah, a lot. And I think that's Kostic for you in a nutshell. He even, he comes on and he amazes people, or he's just, one of the bunch, like this gray mouse kind of thing that, doesn't excel in anything. And it's been his story throughout Juventus. And I generally can't hate on the guy because I think he's a decent footballer. But I think this season especially, he lacks confidence, he lacks minutes, and also being a winger and being an offensive winger and being a bit, reduced in the pecking order by coming in even for a left back or a right back or what have you, it affects him. It affects him. And, due to the lack of choices and the people we have on the bench, at times he's the best solution of the worst ones we have. But I think that's the biggest point of what's wrong with this Juventus as a whole. The quality that we need to maintain, we're unable to maintain due to that, huge volatility between good, moderate, and shit players. We have almost no world-class players to save the day. The ones we do have need to overperform in order to perform to a certain standard that we're used of. And the rest is, make or break that can shift from one week to the other. You have guys who can, seal a hat trick on any given day, and the week after, can't even stop a ball to save their life. So, yeah.
Now, David, a lot of folks earlier on in the session in chat, and I was trying to sort of mentally putting them on the back burner, said that they were pleased with his performance, that David came on and he had a good, professional, clean, not game breaking or anything, but a clean performance to help see out the game. What is your evaluation of his contribution today?
I tend to agree, but the fact that I have to agree makes me question myself or my football brain because I'm a bit old school, call me old fashioned, but if you bring in a striker, I need a striker to be offensive. I need him to weigh on the defense, to poach a goal, snag an opportunity, whatever. And we could talk all day about his hold up play, which was very good today and in balance with the team spirit and sacrifice and whatever, which, I like. But this is still a player that earns 6.5 million net a year who fails to score or be at least somewhat threatening to the other team's defense. And that's where my issues lie with David. And I think we were both a bit, giddy when we knew that he was coming. I know I was. I thought, this is a guy who's literally done nothing but score goals. Like the man gets out of bed and decides to score a goal from out of his bedroom for some apparent reason because the amounts that he did, were just baffling. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd expect him to ease into that role. I'm not saying, scoring 40 a season, but you'd expect him to, to pump out 20 to 25 goals. I think that was reasonable of us. And I think that was also the expectation set by Juventus. And then you just notice that it doesn't work out. And during the season, you're sort of getting accustomed to the mediocrity. And you think,
Mm-hmm.
well, he held up play. He fenced off a defender. Well, good for him. Here's another 6 million, man. Like, it wasn't a bad performance. Of course, it was. It was a good performance by his standards, but I just feel ashamed of myself having to admit that because that's not why you buy a striker and pay him that much. So he doesn't weigh on the defense, doesn't create anything. He's for me slow and a bit clumsy. And even when he gets put in at the position that he can score, he usually doesn't. So to me, he's the clone of Koopmeiners.
There's
In
just
the sense of
there's one big 60 million euro difference between the two.
yeah, but in terms of output pre-Juventus, output at Juventus, like the difference is night and day. The same
Well,
with
you have
Cope, and
Coop. You had Douglas Luiz. You had, I mean, arguably, and we know there's the injury issue, Shagrova, Nico Gonzalez. I mean, so many of our big transfers, right, have been really quite poor. And then you have, the loan with a 4.8 million option in Boga, who comes in as scoring goals for fun.
yeah,
So we covered the subs, and since we weren't not really going into any more tactical depth than we already have, let's quickly go through the starting 11. Generally, what I've done with you in the past for folks listening live or after the fact is we sort of pick a couple players we want to focus in on, and the rest we just do like one or two words. Okay, so each one of us is going to pick one player we want to talk about, and then we're going to do one word reviews for the rest of them. So I'll give it
yeah.
to you, and maybe we'll just couch it as who's your man of the match, and
Okay.
then we'll do the rest of them with just quick one word reviews. So you go first.
Yep. Um, for me, Locatelli. I want to focus on Locatelli. Um, because today I felt that Locatelli lost 30% of its ability due to the lack of McKenney. And it didn't become this apparent to me in the past because you're used to having them play alongside each other, being on the pitch together in a sense. And we both saw, given the output and the statistics by McKenney, that he was a big factor in this Juve team. What I failed to understand was the impact on the midfield per se that he had, and especially on Locatelli. And you pointed that out very eloquently in the beginning. Locatelli is somebody who can distribute, who has that vision, who has that timing, which is, essential for a decent midfielder. But he loses parts of that when he's too concerned in handling other issues that are happening around the midfield because he doesn't have the backup of a jutile player like McKenney, who's basically kind of like your dust hoovering all around that area and picking up these grimy balls and these runs into spaces and what have you. And for me, that became very apparent today. And that's also one of the reasons why I think that you need to pair Locatelli with a McKenney or a McKenney clone in terms of footballing capability and aspects. So if you're looking for another midfielder or a vice midfielder or whatever Spalletti's put in his wish list, you need to have somebody on the same level as McKenney. I'm not going to say the output in terms of goals or contributions to goals, but the player that could do the dirty work in the midfield and have Locatelli still have that 10-15% of extra freshness to deliver that through ball, to deliver that long pass, to deliver that run in between the lines. So yeah, and the second player, if I may, I don't want to go on around, but I want to highlight Kenan again. I want to highlight Kenan again in the sense I'm not picking on the guy. I love him. He's I've spent a lot of time praising him and saying whatever good player is. And he also, showed that on the pitch. But for us as supporters, I think we're entitled to expect more because we do so with players that are less in terms of quality. We expect more from Thuram, but Thuram is Thuram. He'll grow, he'll get better, but he won't reach superstar level. We asked the same from Lloyd Kelly. Lloyd Kelly, for me, comeback of the season. I think also for you. But this is his limit, in all honesty. So for me, I find it a bit baffling that we are not overly critical of Kenan at times, because I feel that we deserve more from him. And I think he needs to see that as well and use that as a bit of motivation to get a bit better and to, become a bit more grown as a player. And I think we especially need that. I see that Zach has left the building for some strange emergency, so you'll have to do with me, make with me. I'm gonna go and continue on my rant if you guys don't mind. Zach's back. Nice. You're still muted,
Yeah,
my
I
friend.
had to run something to my wife. I'm sorry. I sent you a
No,
message,
no worries.
but it's got to what you got to do. Sorry. But we're
No
back.
worries, no worries. We handled that. I tried to handle it as professional as I could, but
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if it was a success
Duty
or not.
called. So I think for my side, it's really hard to pick a number one player. I think the team struggled today to really impose their will. It was a sloppy game. We all said it earlier
Yeah.
on, and the chat agreed. It just was one of those games you got to tough out. And I think to that extent, you can laud the defense. I think the defense in general played pretty decent. You could laud Di Gregorio, but Di Gregorio had a couple howlers as well as a couple good saves. I think I'm going to give it to Boga. You have very little opportunities to have any impact. You're playing a position that you've really never played in your career. And the team desperately needs a win, and you come out against your former employer and you bag a poacher's goal. And to that, it's like we've really lacked, and David specifically, as much as he might have been tidy to, whatever, he's
Yeah.
lacked that finishing touch. And we've needed somebody to put
Hmm.
that final ball away. If it's not some brilliance for Yildiz, it's nobody. Chico has really, struggled to do that, except for recently. He's been on good form recently over the last month, but for much of the season, Chico had lived up to that. David has not lived up to that. Openda has not lived up to that. Dushan, before was injured, did not live up to that. The only other player that arguably did, McKenney, was suspended.
Yeah.
So someone, especially, with what you talked about Yildiz's performance, someone had to step up. And the fact that he's done it and is doing something that he struggled to do in his career is huge. And so for that moment and for that goal and for what it means for this team, for what it means to this table,
Hmm.
he's my man of the match.
Yeah. I can follow you in that regard. I can follow you, especially because, and also, and we have to, be honest about this. Boga's so likable as a player. He always tries his best and he doesn't overdo it. Like Kenan at times goes past one, goes past two. I know, let me take on the third one. Boga's never that. Boga tries to be as clinically, as he can be. And he goes past one, and then it's time he either handles the ball in or he tries to, set up a cross or anything or shoots himself. And that can go wrong. There's nothing wrong with that either. But he's very, yeah, let's say business minded in terms of what he can do and what he puts out on the field. So that makes him very likable. But for the man of the match, I have to pick Di Gregorio.
Your two players that you highlighted are Di Gregorio and Locatelli, who longtime listeners will know are Frederic's two favorite players on the team.
Di Gregorio not as much as man of the match because I think his performance, as I said earlier on, wasn't up to par with the numbers that he had going this season. But I'm going to tell you why Di Gregorio, because you said that he had a couple of hours, which I agree on. But I saw another Di Gregorio goal, not in terms of goalkeeping qualities, because I think as a goalkeeper you're still mediocre at best. I'm going to die on that hill as well because I've seen my fair share of goalkeepers. But I saw him in sense of mentality. He was correcting players. At a certain point, he was shouting against Locatelli, who in all means is our captain on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
For him to come up and say like, "You fucker, you weren't doing your job." To me, that is something that you wouldn't think of when you thought of Di Gregorio 2 months ago, 3 months ago, because that was one of the issues we had with him, not just the technical capabilities, but also the lack of communication and let's call it the lack of leadership as well, which you need to have to a certain point as a goalie. And while he was not technically perfect today, you could really see somebody who hit rock bottom, literally, in his professional career, and now is learning from those things. And he's not gonna be the best goalkeeper in the world. He'll never be that. He's mediocre, but he was much more vocal, and you could see that growth moment that he had. And for me, that's rewarding in the sense that we're so used to getting people booed off, kicked out, contracts terminated, and then you have Juntili coming in and brushing everybody off and what have you. And now somebody, reminded me a bit of Kelly, to be honest. So I like that, but I agree with Mitch. We still need a number one, and who knows? Maybe we'll get that new number one.
Hey, spoilers or hint, 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 hint.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk. We talked Boga, we talked Holm, we talked Locatelli, we talked Di Gregorio, we talked. I think that's it. So let's talk about the quick one word, one phrase for the rest of our starting 11 review. Let's start with the defense. Kalulu.
Meh, today. I found him underwhelming.
Bremer.
Sell him. Yeah, I mean, this is the Bremer we're gonna get. This is Bremer at his ceiling right now. He's been so for a couple of months, and it's partially due to that injury. And you're not gonna shake that off. So we have to make amends with the fact that, shall we keep him? Is this a good enough version of Bremer to lead our defense? If not, then this will probably be the only year that we can get decent money for him. And kind of spoiling a bit, but I think that Juventus know that as well and share my sentiments. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bremer leaves this summer.
The contribution seemed there though today. I mean, he wasn't like he was great, but he was winning a lot of the aerial duels. And I think that was important when they had 65,000 crosses and corners. You needed people to step up and win those aerial balls. Kalulu's not great in the air. Kelly's shaky. Bremer won a significant number of aerial duels today. And so I don't think he's playing like the best defender in Serie A, but today for the contribution that he had, I think he did the job. I think he did the job.
I agree, but I think we bought Bremer also because of his capability to be a bit more proactive in terms of when he's defending, to get into the ball before the opposing striker or whatever. That was one of his biggest qualities, because that was also a lot of the reasons where he was the one that started counterattacks. He went in so proactively for the ball. He won that ball, and that's all gone. And in terms of money wise, I think you're kind of pin yourself to the wall there. Kind of think that if this is the most that you're going to get out of a guy, but on the other end that if you sell him, you'll be able to get at least 45 million in easy.
I mean, ideally, yeah. Or not ideally, mandatory. I mean, if you're selling Bremer, you gotta be able to sell well with a player with his CV. Okay, we kind of disobeyed the one word or phrase. So let's go to Kelly.
Decent. I think I just seen him make one mistake or one bad pass throughout the game. There were a couple of other issues, of course, like his heading is awful. At times, his positioning is wonky at best, especially at set pieces. But this was a typical Kelly performance, I feel.
Cambiaso. Yeah, he didn't have a notable, brain fart moment today. He just had periods of poor play. Is that any better?
It sounds better. I don't know if it'll make his contribution any better. Um, Cambiaso,
He
I
also
could
wasn't. I mean, he also had some periods of good play. I mean, I don't want to be overly critical, so
no, no, no,
I'll let
no.
you give me your one word or phrase.
It makes sense that Barcelona wants to buy him. From a Barcelona standpoint, it makes sense. It really does.
It doesn't make sense for people who watch him week in and week out.
Um, Let me rephrase that. If you're on a team which does nothing but attack for 90 minutes, or 90% of those 90 minutes, doesn't have anything to fear in terms of being grabbed by the throat by the opponents because of the awesomeness of your team or the aura or whatever you want to call it, you could see him do really well in such a team. When it comes to Juventus, where you at times just need to fight and show that passion and that concentration, especially in the defensive parts, and you have these Cambiaso moments, then you're kind of redundant to that team, in my opinion. So would Cambiaso do well at Barcelona? No doubt. Will Barcelona buy him? I pray to God they do.
Please, yeah, because we'd actually probably get a good fee out of that. Chico,
Underwhelming. I thought he was, rising up to the occasion. His form was gradually improving. But today I think he had a not a good performance.
well, I'd say, look,
Uh,
I told you the first half, the bottom three touches in the entire game, so including Atalanta, was our front three.
yeah,
I would argue that in the first half, Chico had more impact than Yildiz and Boga.
yeah, that's true. But that doesn't mean that he played a good game. So, for me, I just expect more. And especially with Chico, the thing is, either he's omnipresent in terms of possession, and for some reason, 90% of the time, he makes the final last bad call. He shoots when he doesn't need to, or he passes, or he doesn't pass when he needs to pass, or whatever. But today, he had so little of these moments where he had that choice that his impact was even diminished in that sense. Yeah, and then it all comes down to is he somebody who can crack open these kind of tough games for you? And I'd rather much prefer a Boga type player who does that with a lot more, let's say, complacency and sense of belonging on the pitch than as a Conceição at this point, who just seemed like a dog chasing a car at times.
The thing is, with we talked strengths and weaknesses when we were talking Boga and Holm. Chico, one of his weaknesses is that he really struggles in between the boxes in possession. And today, so much of the game was on the back foot, at least from a Juventus perspective, was on the back foot. You're not, and that is the exact type of situation where he's going to struggle because of his diminutive stature. Where
Yeah,
while quick, he's not fast either. And so, yes, he struggled when we were in that, and he's always going to struggle unless he materially changes his game, which is unlikely in those positions. The one time where we had possession in their half, right, which was right after halftime, right? He has that great give and go with Boga, and
yep,
I think reasonably or arguably, depending on where you fall, should have had an assist. So he is, obviously he doesn't. There's no assist or goal for Chico for today, but that's what you're talking about. He needs to do. He did do it, and then he had the one where, and this was his fault, where he overplayed David in late in the game with a counterattacking opportunity where
yep.
she should have fed David in the flat. I mean, he's limited because he struggles in those in games like today. just by the virtue of it, of who he is. I think you can rightfully criticize him, but at the same time, we've often said when you put a player in a position not to be successful, that sort of takes away from the criticism, right? Would you say that today was Chico not playing well, or was it that sort of the game plan or how the game ended up playing out sort of
Uh,
neutralized his ability to impact the game?
no, I think it's a bit of both. But I first of all, I have two reasonings behind that. The first is that I always think, and this is maybe my fault, I always think in terms of um, ROI. We paid enough for Chico, and the ROI just isn't there. You paid him to provide assists and goals, which he hasn't been able to do yet. So you base him solely on that, and you know that you paid over 40 million for him if you take in the loan and the add-ons and whatever. So I think rightfully you expect more. And then the other thing is, you were pointing towards that assist that he gave to Boga. Once again, I think his final touch there was flawed. In order to have a good tap, and especially at the speed that Boga was coming in, you need to deliver that ball in very hard, very fast, very solid onto the foot. But instead, if you look at the replay, you could see that the pass was a bit too soft and made Boga miss a step because he had to wait for the ball to arrive. So while he did the good, or he chose the good moment, the passing itself or the timing of the passing was a bit poor. And that's my main gripe. You expect more from these players. You expect them to play that ball in the way it should have been played in, where you shouldn't be able to even miss it or mistime it. And it's these little details that kind of get the best of me with regards with looking at a player, or trying to look at a player objectively without pulling in the transfer data and whatever. So it's a bit hit and miss with him.
Yeah, his recent good form has somewhat papered over the fact that he has not had the contribution we would expect. He has, as we stand across all competitions, or Jonathan David has 50% more goal contributions than Chico does. And we rail on how Jonathan David, who came in on a free, has been useless and terrible. But I mean, what's a guy? I mean, if that's what we're saying, that Chico,
Yeah.
that Jonathan David has 50% more goal contributions than Chico, who's been with the team for an extra year. I mean, that's somewhat of an indictment. But let's our one word and one phrase.
I just want no. But I want to say one thing, and I find it so hilarious. I looked at a clip yesterday when he was at Ajax Chico, and he was coming back from an injury, and he played the game, and he played the game like he plays the games with us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of puff and less substance. And they asked the coach what did he thought about Chico's performance, and the reporter added, even prior to finishing his sentence, but we saw a lot of that passion and grinta in him today. And then the coach responded, well, if I get the kid guy in who washes the clothes and I pay him 3 million a year, he'll show some grinta as well, but that doesn't mean that he'll win the Ballon d'Or. So it was kind of this Dutch humor and a kind of, but he was right on all parts. Like, we always praise him for having grinta, and Jonathan David seems slow on, but at the end of the day, you need to judge him on why you bought him. Not because he's likable or he signs autographs or he can, cook a mean steak or whatever. No, he needs to score and deliver assists, and he doesn't do that. And
I don't know, cook a mean steak. I mean, that goes a long way. Certainly where
yeah,
I'm
but
at, where I'm at in my life and waistline. So
not for 4.5 million a year, it doesn't.
yeah, well, I would need 4.5 million first. So there's one player that a lot of folks were chatting about earlier in the show I believe there's only one player left to talk about, and who I refer to as Mr. Shooting Boots. Thuram is, I think a lot of people are super, super frustrated with Chico. I think Thuram might be the most frustrating player on Juventus for me. More so than Cambiaso, more so than Chico and some of the other folks that people just seem to drive them nuts. Thuram has it all. He shows, good flashes, whether it be, and I'm actually going to sound like you, in defense, driving through the middle with possession. But when that dude gets a chance to shoot on goal, and he gets reasonable number of chances throughout the season, just like his perfectly weighted ball from Holm today. This dude cannot find the net.
Nope.
And you and I had aggressively pushed back at you when you said that one of the big knocks against Locatelli is his lack of goals, because I felt like that wasn't necessarily part of his game. Thuram, I feel like it absolutely has to be part of his game based on his skill set. And that's a chance that I'm so glad didn't bite us in the a wasted chance that didn't bite us in the butt. But that sort of is somewhat emblematic of his season with us. Is he just has, he did a lot right, but his finishing touch is just not there. He hasn't risen to that next level that we would have hoped he would have at where he finished last season.
No. And I wholeheartedly agree, and I think you'll agree with me as well, as we saw him play live. And it's an imposing figure in terms of presence in the midfield, and he's always intertwined within these kind of moments where he needs to struggle for possession or do something defensively. But in producing certain things, there's this, like, dude just blows a circuit whenever he needs to do something that can alter the score or the score line of the game. And that'll be my biggest gripe with him. In his defense, though, he's a player that you bought under the radar for a relatively low amount. So even if you should part ways with him, it'll be beneficial in terms of financial gain. And you'll probably get a better player out of that if you have a decent scouting or a decent sporting director. Even if you keep him, it wouldn't be that much of a loss, because if you put him next to somebody or close to somebody who has more of this aggressive threat, then it takes away from him having to be that person, that presence in the box. I could see him work out perfectly in a 3-man midfield with Bernardo Silva.
I knew you were going to say it. It's just every episode.
But it makes sense. Episode. You have Locatelli doing what he does best.
Yeah, the dirty
maybe
work.
To a lesser extent. You have Thuram being the jack of all trades there and kind of, doing everything. But eventually, prior to doing something or shooting or trying to give an assist, you hand that over to a Bernardo Silva guy who is born with the gift of scoring or delivering assists or giving through passes or whatever. And then your midfield changes completely. It almost changes when you have McKenney in there.
Well, actually, I'm going to interrupt you now, and this is a question I have for you, and I want folks in the chat to answer. So, because you keep, as Alex says, teasing us with Bernardo Silva, so we're going to pretend like you just said in a 3-man midfield. Okay, we're pretending a 3-man midfield. We have Locatelli, Bernardo Silva. The question is for you and those in chat: between Thuram and McKenney, who occupies that third spot and why? So why don't you give us your answer, Frederic? I'm looking in chat to see what they got to say.
I'd say McKenney due to his utility, due to the fact that he can score with more ease than Thuram will ever have to do. And also because of the fact that I think Weston, if paired with better players, becomes better by 50% himself. That's really a unique thing that Weston has. If you surround him with better players, he'll immediately become better himself. Whereas with a Thuram will also have that progression, but not in the same way as McKenney will, in my opinion. So, for me, it's McKenney, but I think that you need to learn Thuram at that point to be the stand-in for either Locatelli or either Weston. And then you're onto something, because if you can have somebody on the bench like Thuram who can fill both those gaps in midfield and do that in a good fashion, then you'll always have that quality in midfield. And that's something that we're lacking: the consistency, stability, and the quality in midfield, in my opinion.
Is it unfair for me? And
no.
I'm stalling because it's to get a couple more responses from chat on this question of McKenney versus Thuram. Is it unfair for me? Like I said, it was unfair for you with regards to Locatelli. Is it unfair for me to say that or to judge Thuram on not scoring more goals?
No, because he gets more opportunity than Locatelli. Locatelli doesn't find himself in the box as much as Thuram does. So if you're, just placing Locatelli in the positions that we could see Thuram this past season and missing those goals, then I think you'd be fairly, the same amount of critical over Locatelli than Thuram. I feel just a midfielder, if given the opportunity, needs to score. It's as simple as that. Whether it be Locatelli or Thuram or McKenney, if you get an opportunity, you need to, especially those ones. Like this was a penalty in motion, to be honest, and you don't even hit the target. Like makes no sense for a professional football player, and he had a lot of those. Also, the fact that I think that Locatelli is more fatigued because he has to cross a lot more ground than Thuram does in those instances. And Locatelli is somebody who plays with a, let's say, a higher concentration rate, because Locatelli is always somebody that's scanning the area in terms of where can I play this pass, so it's a bit more demanding in that respect. So you can forgive him for not having the freshness or the quality up front after a long game or whatever. With Thuram, with his physicality, you just expect more. You just expect more. So if Wes can do it, and Wes is or was more out of shape than Thuram ever is in terms of physicality, then it dribbles down to quality again. Wes just has more quality.
Look, well, on the fitness thing, and this drives me nuts. Even when people were saying McKenney was fat and out of shape, and he, was Big Mac as like a cheeseburger, that dude still ran more than anyone else. So like Big Mac or not, I like you can't really question his work rate. And the chat has spoken. They universally said McKenney over Thuram, which I think tells you all that you need to know. Last thing about the game, because I think we've touched on everything, and then we're going to transition to any transfer news that you have, sort of as a mini a scoop, since we were not able to do one earlier this week. We wanted to, but we were not able to. The last question for you is with regards to the Gatti non-handball. Right call?
Dubious.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty clearly the right call. You said dubious.
I felt that he was putting his arm away right after the ball hit the arm, if you know what I mean.
Woo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. It was on my person. I didn't move my hand, and it was kind of. You could see him leaning towards the ball with his whole body, and then once the ball hit his hand or his arm or the, I think it was the upper arm, he went like, I'm gonna hold that one there, and then I'm gonna just shout frantically, saying that was attached to my body, and that'll be the end of it. I'm not gonna say it was the wrong call, but it was something that could have gone both ways. And I think that if we were in the other position and we were Atalanta, I think we rightfully have a thing or two to say post game about that as well. So of course he couldn't cut his arm off like Mitch just said. So it was, the gray area, and I'm happy that we didn't get a penalty against, but with the things that we have had against us this year, it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that a referee would have blown for a penalty at that point.
Yeah, when I watched both the live version and the replay, I'm like, that's not a penalty. Similar to what Mitch said. But when he starts screaming and yelling after, that just makes him look guilty, right? I mean,
that's like what's me?
If it's not a penalty, then bro, just be like, what are you guys talking about? But he's freaking out. And by the way, for our commentator here in America, the guy made a pointed effort to mention Gatti's hairline, which I found somewhat hilarious. I realized that is somewhat not a non sequitur, but he did mention his hairline a couple times. But when you're furiously yelling, looking at that strong hairline that we both lack, that makes him look guilty. Like if you didn't do it, just
Yeah,
give him the "what are you guys
yeah,
talking about" face, but
yeah.
instead he's
And
screaming and
immediately,
yelling, he's running up into people. Like, come on, dude.
yeah, he was running up to the Atalanta players instead of the ref. Like he was like foul money. No, I didn't. Blah, blah, blah. And then the ref was like, no, 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 no. And we were lucky at that point that it wasn't that long to go, and Atalanta was in a rush to take that corner kick as well
Hmm.
because we kind of swept it under the rug a bit at that point, which was good because there was no official VAR review, I think. But
No,
that
there
also
had
goes to
there
show.
had to have been a VAR review. It just didn't require.
Yeah,
They didn't.
it
They didn't
wasn't.
ask.
Yeah,
They didn't ask Maresca to go to the monitor.
no, but that's the thing because if Maresca's called to the monitor, then I think he wouldn't be so sure in not calling that a penalty, to be honest. Because if you look in the replay, then of course it's a replay, so it's a bit in slow mo. You could see that body going, left to right towards the ball, and it makes for a bit of a distorted image at that point. But
Let me
that's
ask
the
you a
image you
question though
base
about.
yourself on.
Let me ask you a question about that then. If the call on the field was a pen,
Hmm.
does that call get reversed? And this is your opinion. In your opinion, Frederic.
In my opinion, it should, because if you can see in real time what the intention of the player is, then there's no point in
Yeah, but
pulling in.
attention's irrelevant. It's whether your arm is in an unnatural position, whether you intend to do anything or not is irrelevant, right?
The arm
If you
wasn't
call on
in
the
that.
field, if the call on the
Yeah,
field is a penalty and you see that replay, are you letting? I mean, is that a clear and obvious error?
for me it is, because
Okay.
you could see that the intent is not to move the arm towards the ball, but you put your
Yeah.
body in front of the ball, and then it sort of happens to hit you on the arm, which is, to me, not an intentional foul because you have your hands firmly against your body. So in terms of the legislation around it,
Firmly
firmly,
against.
yeah, the fact that you throw your body halfway across the
I mean,
field is another thing. He did that kind of sneaky, like, I'm gonna throw myself there but keep my hands here. So it was sneaky, but it could have gone both ways, but it was a stupid decision of Gatti.
Well,
I
I
think
mean, I
it
think
was.
in no world, I think as a defender and as a former defender myself, I think you try to make that play, and I think in no world, and maybe this is my defense bias coming out, but I don't think so. I think it pretty objectively, honestly, I think in no world that be a penalty. Personally, let's I said we were going to move on to some transfer news. I think before we do that, I think we have to talk about the table, where we're at.
Yeah,
Okay, only a
yeah.
few games to go. And we were talking, when we have been talking about, and Mitch asks in the chat, will Inter beat Como tomorrow? I think we focus Como. I think we have to also mention another team in the mix. I mean, yes, Roma's doing well and whatnot, but I think the most important other team in the mix is Milan.
Yeah.
They just got blown out. The Ozymandias asked earlier, and I don't know if he's still on the on in the chat. Asked, will we be able to beat Milan and in the San Siro? I mean, they just lost at home 3-0 to Udinese.
Yeah.
They have lost 3 out of their last 5 games. They're in disarray right now. So we have to talk about. We thought it was going to be Napoli, you and I, but Milan's slipping. Como has a big game tomorrow. Not only do we play Milan, but they also have to play Atalanta, who very well could be starving for a victory when they play, I think, a week or 2 after they play us. So as we stand here, we are 4th place. Como obviously plays tomorrow against Inter.
Mhm.
We are 3 points behind a Milan team who we play in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
After beating Atalanta, and without obviously knowing the future and what's going to happen in tomorrow's game, is our chances higher to reach top 4 now than they were a week ago?
Mathematically, yes, because the game.
I mean, of course,
games.
mathematically, but I'm talking about
No, but these are the things that influence the end table at the end, because the pressure's on Como now. That's one thing, and Como, is our direct opponent right now for this number 4 spot.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, as you said, Milan as well, because if Milan next week misses a step albeit just a draw against I don't know who they're playing, and I don't care because this Milan can
Verona.
win and lose from every team.
Verona.
Yeah, it's gonna be but you never know because Verona clearly
Eh.
needs the points as
Oh,
well.
they need the
So
points. They need the
so
points. Yeah.
I mean, it's not all of it's not fair to think that a draw is in the works there. It could be in the works, but the pressure's on them as well.
Oh,
So we're kind
they
of
were in no competitions except the
no,
Copa.
no,
The expectation was not only that they were going to be top four, but that they would potentially, and of course Allegri is very good at this, and so he was disagreeing with this next point. But in the media sense that they could challenge Inter for first place. And now look at they lost 3 out of 5 at the money end of the season. I think the pressure's on them. I would venture that the pressure is more on them than it is on Juventus or Como.
I think Juventus, if you're smart, if Spalletti's smart, he'll just go out and say to these guys, okay, we done a good deal today, this weekend, regardless of the Como result was good for us in terms of that fourth place. And Spalletti also just came out saying that it isn't about money to buy players. Juventus just need to be in the Champions League, meaning that to him,
It's pride too.
yeah. So
the
also,
players aren't thinking about the summer mercado. It's pride. They're looking at the next game. It's pride.
To me, this is also reassuring in the sense that Spalletti will have had his demands met in a way that Comoli would have said, if you extend, regardless of this Champions League qualification or not, we'll get you that quality injection you want. Maybe, a budget version, depending on the budget itself, if we don't qualify, which is normal, but we'll get, players in. So to me, that's all good. But now you have pressure on Como. You also put pressure on Inter and irreversibly put a bit of pressure on Napoli as well. Because Napoli's out here thinking, well, maybe we can do a bit more because it makes a huge difference into coming in third or second in the table in Italy in terms of where you're going to stand in Champions League position wise. So, it's very high pressure at this point, and the only team that's feeling that pressure being relieved a bit, in my opinion, should be Juventus. Because if you go out and you win your next game, you've done everything you could. If the chances
Milan,
are,
right? Bologna.
yeah, and if you have the opportunity to overtake Milan at that point, you have that extra stimulus. Whereas to Milan, it's just added pressure on the pile of pressure that's been added throughout the season already. So, this is thus far for Juventus the dream weekend.
Yeah, it has been. And so 2 things real quickly, if I'm not mistaken. So we're 3 points behind Milan. We beat them. I believe we have like all the tiebreakers.
Yeah.
So technically we win out, we're in. Because we have the tiebreak over Milan. So regardless of a Como. But let's talk Como. Como tomorrow. An Inter team that does not have to beat them now that Milan has fallen off a cliff. In Como. Do you think Inter takes that game seriously? And what do you think happens, especially considering that Como looked horrible last week? Oh, the glasses are on. Oh, uh-oh. All
right. Como will take it seriously, of course, because they're playing at home, and for them it's do or die at this point, especially with the result of tonight. And the other thing is, I think Inter will take it serious as well, but for them it's not so much do or die. I think for them a draw is nice. They're on schedule. They can complete the Serie A within, I think, 3 weeks.
They're 7 points clear with 7 games to go.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Let me see. Is that with a game in hand? Let me just verify. Yeah, no, it's even on games with Napoli. So 7 games to go, just like Napoli, with 7-point cushion.
Yeah. So the pressure's not so on to them, and the fact that Lautaro's injured again, it's a huge letdown for Inter. I think an Inter with Lautaro is 30% better than an Inter without Lautaro. So I don't know how they'll come out. I think best case scenario for us is an Inter win. as much as I hate to say it, because we just can't, compete in terms of points with them anymore. And it doesn't make any difference to us if Napoli or Inter get the title in all honesty. Would rather wish none of them did, but such is life. So we want an Inter victory, but I can't see it happening. I'd be happy with a draw. If somebody, place a piece of paper, you could sign here for the draw tomorrow, a 2-all draw. I'd I'd sign on the dot, to be honest.
If I'm not mistaken, they're playing 4 times this year.
Yeah.
The first game was, I think Inter blew out Como like 4-0 or something. And then the second game, which was the first leg of the Copa semis, was maybe one of the most drabbest games of football you've ever seen in your life. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I think we're set for another one of those. Like if I had to make a prediction, I would see just an absolute snore fest. And to be honest, as much as from a point standpoint, having that extra point dropped for Como losing would be nice. A draw means we're still 4th.
Yeah.
That is, if I'm not mistaken, the last top opponent that Como has this year, though. Well, we still have, Bologna, who's arguably a top team, and then obviously Milan to go. And Milan has Atalanta and us. So I think if Como is going to drop points, this would be the game to do it. So maybe that extra point lost, especially because we don't have any tiebreakers against them. It would be nice. But I'll take the draw. I'm predicting an absolute snore fest.
We'll see come tomorrow. But, we did our job. And I think that's something that we need to remember throughout these last couple, 7 games. We just need to do our job. And, the other scorelines we can manifest. We can, get into that. It's on us to get the points in. We'll see where we'll land. And thus far, we're doing a good job because we kept the points at home against Genoa. We unexpectedly won today. Deserved or not is of no matter to me. The next is the Bologna game.
No, win's a win. You take that bad boy.
So
put it in your pocket and
if you have those 3 points, especially against Bologna, then you kind of outdid yourself in that respect because you come out of the gates 9 points clear, 9 points out of 9 to be got in that respect. And then the Milan game is a whole other game because it's still a derby. It's still one of the most, something always happens during Juve Milan or Milan Juve. So regardless of that, you still have cemented you're not loosening your grip on top 4. So
yeah. And by the way, real quick, Arthur and Osama both corrected me. Como does still have Napoli to go. So we have Milan, Bologna. They have Inter, Napoli, and Milan has us and Atalanta. So I guess two toppish teams for each of the 3 vying for that. What I can now say is 3rd and 4th spot.
Yeah, and that timing could be of crucial importance in the sense that if you have that Napoli-Como game, it could well be that Napoli is at that point maybe even fighting for the Scudetto because of Inter lose tomorrow and Napoli win. They're 4 points apart with Inter, which is not a great deal, in all honesty. But
they'll start feeling it. They'll start feeling it.
And in that same period, it might be crucial for Como to churn out that win in order to get, that 4th place in some way, shape, or form, or be, keeping a hold of that final spurt in front of the finish. So these could be the games that will decide the future of not only Como and Napoli or Inter, but also Juventus and maybe even Milan. So as boring as the season was, I think we're in for a hell of a ride for the final weeks, to be honest.
Yeah. How many times we come out here and we're like, I really hope our position's somewhat locked up in, March. And then we're out here.
Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun in that? Hey, there's no Juventus season without 1 or 2 cardiac arrests.
I would love us to be a part of another competition at this time. But yeah, it's been some action-packed couple of seasons, even if it unfortunately is for the fourth spot. Okay, we've talked about the game, we've talked about the table, we've talked about the schedule and the teams, and this is we're 90 minutes in, so let's get a little bit, maybe some quick transfer news. Frederic, you had sent me some texts earlier in the week when we were going to try to do a scoop, and unfortunately that fell through. Why don't you provide some knowledge and maybe tease our audience here with some other things that are going on or cooking behind the scenes as to Juventus's summer market?
Well, I think we can strike one name off the table because there's a reason that John Alcon was present in Bergamo as well.
Oh.
And that was to talk about Karnasecki. Atalanta said, of course, we're willing to sell Karnasecki for 50 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was waiting to hear.
50 million, but no players that they want, within the deal or well, it's 50 million, take it or leave it. We won't even sit down at the table to discuss the bonus or the signing extras or whatever.
So that's
bye-bye. Alcon said, well, thank you for dinner. I'm off. I'm going to watch the game. Good night. Alcon was a bit pissed as well, according to my source, in the sense that he expected a bit of a more lenient stance from Atalanta, because Alcon still feels that if an Italian goalkeeper like Karnasecki has the chances to go through the ranks of Italian football and the pinnacle of it still being Juventus in that respect, then a team like Atalanta should be a bit more open in a sense. I mean, of course, they have their asking price and whatever, but, to be that firm on that and, coming out in an exploratory talk and saying, well, it's going to be 50 million or nothing, kind of rubbed them the wrong way in that respect. And I don't think that money is the issue, but I think the way that Atalanta came out and stating that towards him was a bit like, no, you're disrespecting me, fuck you.
I think the greatest thing, if Karnasecki's going to get, I don't know if he's going to get legitimate offers over the summer, but the teams are going to come knocking for Karnasecki over the summer. I think ultimately the best bargaining thing for any team, Juventus included, is that Atalanta finishes as low as possible in the table, because if they're not in European competitions, they can't demand that high price, and frankly, they're not in a position to say no to those to reasonable offers for Karnasecki if they're not in European competition.
If I'm a player of Atalanta and I love Atalanta and I'm grateful I have the chance to go over to Juve, which is my dream team, which is true for Karnasecki as well. Karnasecki is an unofficial Juventus fan. And afterwards you hear that your club asked for 50 million, which is a bit over the top, let's just state, without any wiggle room. I wouldn't be so happy as a player.
But he's Italian. I mean, we're not in the World Cup, right? So he's all summer to fight that out. You don't fight that out. You don't fight that out now.
I don't think they're going to fight that out. I don't think that we'll see Karnasecki in a Juventus jersey, or at least not next season. So that's me putting on my my negative Nancy hat here, but I don't think it'll happen.
Well, let me ask about we've heard, obviously, a lot of people have been talking about Karnasecki and wanting to see him at Juventus, though today he was totally at fault, in my opinion, for the goal scored, pulling out from that cross. Let's talk about Vlahovic, because he was coming back from injury. He was going to be the savior. He was going to come in, he was going to bag a bunch of goals, and we were going to renew him. It was almost guaranteed we would see Dusan in a 1+1, blah, 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 blah. But then it's been very quiet since he has this new injury.
Yeah, Juventus
what is the status of Vlahovic? Straight to voicemail.
Well, we have the upper hand in the negotiation, in the sense that there is some concern within Juventus management about his injuries, because we looked at it holistically over the past 3 seasons, and you don't expect a player of his age and his physicality to get injured that often as he is. And that was something that was brought on the negotiation table as well, in the sense that he could be the savior for Juventus, but in the same regard, he is a liability in that respect.
He's missed a lot of
So
games for us.
yeah,
And
Juventus made it.
unlike say Neymar, who missed an astronomical number of games in his career, when Vlahovic plays, he's more often
Not
than not
Neymar.
bad. It's like
He's not Neymar. No, he's
when he plays, he's more often than not bad. He's good for he's really good in September,
yeah, true.
and that's it.
But that's it. That's about it. Maybe somewhere along the signs of May, like he wakes up or something from hibernation. But Juventus made it very clear we won't push any more than 5 million all in bonuses, which would make him land at, I think, 4.1, excluding bonuses, 4.2 with a stretch. We won't go beyond that. That's on the table. Yeah. So,
well, look,
so
Eden Hazard. I'm laughing at a comment more Eden Hazard than Neymar. I mean, but let's be real. Before his Real Madrid move, I mean, Eden Hazard was. I mean, he was impressive.
Amazing.
And he was amazing. Neymar has always had sort of that injury issues where he missed half the season. But
Hazard just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
Hazard just didn't give.
Once he got that 100 million euro a move from Chelsea, I mean, he's just like done. Talk about eating cheeseburgers. That dude showed up wider than he is tall.
My man, literally, and I witnessed this. He got subbed during a qualification game for Belgium because of his injury or whatever. He took a shower and went to the burger stand in the stadium to eat a burger. Like
that's me, right?
That's
me.
That's. I love him for that. I just love him for that. And they asked him, "What were you doing?" I just wanted a burger, man. Leave me the fuck alone. Like. I love that.
Didn't care. That didn't care. Sorry, we digress. We digress.
Yeah, we did. As far as burning some of the names along the way, I think it's time for me to burn Senezi's name as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we
put our offer in. We mentioned him a lot.
Yeah, but our offer doesn't even come close to the top 4 offers that he received, and he received offers from Chelsea and United, if I'm not mistaken, along other teams.
Now you've said he's been more. He's looking for top dollar, and if he's looking for top dollar as opposed to fit or football and culture, that kind of, then forget about it.
And from what I hear, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but Chelsea's willing to double the amount in salary that we offered him, literally, and we came close to 3.8 or 4. Say 4. So Chelsea is willing to go above and beyond 7.5, 8 million. And at that point, I can't blame the guy. Let's be honest. If you have no affinity with Juventus as a whole, and you just want to play for another team, and you're fine in England, and a top team wants you and offers double, who am I to say that, shame on him? Let's be honest, get that bag, especially because you're one of the world's up and coming center backs, in my opinion. I think we'll still pull out a move somehow and get something in, but I'm not as optimistic as I was in the past, because in the past we were really onto him. There was a good feeling about him and the communication, and now we're kind of like we've kind of been ghosted in that respect, which is understandable.
He can like everything we've said. He can like the offer we sent, and then somebody gives a bigger number that we can't match, and then all of a sudden, that's just life. Osama asks about Muharamovic.
We're exploring that, but there is a certain thing that's been holding us back, in the sense that we stand to make more of a financial gain when selling him.
You mean Sassuolo sells him? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a veto or a saying in the transfer price, but of course you don't have to be a scientist to know that we won't push for more than 30, 35, meaning that we would spend 15 to 17 million to reacquire him. Whereas if you sell him for 45, 50, which is not a stretch, given on the offers that he's received, then you're set to bring in 25, 26. And Inter is very keen on him. We're trying to avoid that. That's why we're pulling out this disturbance move to check what their offer will be, and if we deem it reasonable to match that and get a 50% discount, then we'll go for it. If it's an offer that's completely, you know, out of the market in terms of realistic expectations, and we stand to make a lot of money from it, then we'll just, get it, let it go through.
So our good Austrian friend Mitch wants to now burn Bernardo Silva.
He wants to
Uh,
burn Bernardo Silva.
well, that's what he says. He says all these so-called close ones next burn Bernardo Silva. So what is the update on the city captain?
We're pushing very, very ferociously for Bernardo Silva. I'll even say more. We've had 2 conference meetings with Mendes the last week.
I think, and this is a different scenario than Senesi, right? I think a la Modric going to Milan. I think what Bernardo Silva is looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, he obviously wants a competitive team. He probably, unlike Modric when Milan isn't playing in Europe, I think he wants a team that's playing in Europe. But I think at this stage of his career, he's looking for a good fit, not necessarily a big bag like Senesi,
No,
right?
no. There are 3 things that Bernardo Silva deems priority. The first is a competitive team, not an instant team, but a team that can grow and get better, and can, you know, what's the word for it, to have some sort of a peak moment where they're working for, where he's a part
Yeah.
of that project that gets Juventus back to top tier European football.
Because one of those things
That
is that he wants a multi-year contract, right? He's not looking for
Yeah,
say 1 year. He's
no,
looking for
no,
2, 3
no.
years, right?
He wants
3 years.
3 years, and we are the only team that are offering that at this point. A bit lower on salary as opposed to Barcelona,
You'd
but the
expect.
length is longer, which he also likes, which plays, to our favor, because the maybe the most important thing is for him to have a steady place for him and his family. He doesn't want this over the top Hollywood-esque or Saudi Arabian, worshipping cult around him like you'd have at Napoli, or if you go to Al Hilal for big money, or to Turkey. He doesn't want that. He wants peace of mind. He wants a city where he can, have a family life as well. That's very important to him.
And let's be
And
real. I mean, Torino, like relative to just the Italian
yeah,
cities of like Rome or Milan. I mean,
the most chill
Torino
place. Yeah,
is yeah.
yeah, yeah. And Mendes also said that to him, because Mendes has frequented Torino a bunch of times with all the deals, and he
Yeah.
said, if you want a good qualitative family life to be held in public, then there's no better place than Torino. So, in terms of us competing for his signature, we're at the very top of it. And I
I,
think, we need that last push now. And we asked him a bit, to be not in a hurry, but we need to know where we stand. And he promised us and Mendes that he'll have his decision within the mid or the end of May. So that's
before the
going to
World
be,
Cup, right?
yeah, 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 absolutely,
Yeah.
before. Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, we're approaching 2 hours, which is maximum of my ability before I get tired of talking. But Luis asks about Coyote. Are we actually interested in Coyote?
Are we interested? Yes, we're interested. We're interested in 1,000 names, but there's nothing concrete there for the moment. We'll see how that unfolds, but it's also not a priority at this point. There are certain names. Spalletti needs 6 players or 6 positions to be filled. Let me rephrase that. Of course, he has his preference, which he talked about with Comoli, Ottolini, and Alcan as well. And there are certain players that are very realistic, and Juventus are doing their best to bring these people in even before the World Cup or the start of the World Cup or the end of the season, however you want to call it. Bernardo Silva is one of them, and I'm gonna spoiler it. Alisson, the goalkeeper, as well, as a specific Spalletti name, which felt into agreement with all management. And Alisson gave his management team the go ahead to start negotiations with Juventus yesterday.
And what kind of deal would that be? Is he also looking for a 3-year deal or something like
Uh,
that?
we made it very clear that a 3-year deal was not going to happen. We budged it down to two, plus an option that we can trigger for the third. So it's kind of, meet me halfway here. And he said that's fine with me.
At
So
33, I mean, he has an injury history, but at 33, that's not for a goalkeeper.
he's,
That's not
you know,
ancient. A 33 year old outfield player, depending on their fitness, you could say he's done. But a goalkeeper, 33, you still have legitimate years, a few years left.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
even a 3-year contract,
I,
if his
I,
injury history was better, would be fine by me. Oh, Mohammed asks a good question about Alisson, because earlier this year he did extend his contract with
yeah,
Liverpool.
yeah.
But I mean, Liverpool, it's one of these things where, as an older player, where they can renew him and they can let him go. It's probably
It wasn't.
we're not thinking that we're gonna need to give
It
this big
was
old
a
transfer fee,
no,
right?
no, no.
Yeah.
It was a clause that was triggered. It was an automatic clause that Liverpool could just trigger without, him agreeing on that. There was no negotiation involved or whatever. But in that clause, it also states that he could leave Liverpool for a fixed fee. So
Do
it's
we know
not
what that is?
Liverpool. No, no. And it's
Okay.
not Liverpool coming out the woodwork saying, oh, but we renewed, so we need 50 mil. You're willing to
Yeah.
pay 50 for Karnaseki. So that's not going to happen. It was a unilateral clause that was triggered, but also gave him the option to negotiate with other teams. And if they deem that fee that's set on worthy to be paid for that inconvenience, then, things could happen very quickly. And I think it's Juventus that want a goalkeeper like Alisson in order to bring in younger goalkeepers so they can gain some experience around him and train with him or be the stand-in for him for like in the Copa games or whatever, and not having to rely on getting somebody in like Di Gregorio and just hoping that he'll do the same as he did with a modest club like Modena. I'm thinking of Defara. There are possible other names that I've heard as well.
Defar's too
So
young. But
yeah,
credit Mitch and Kalo Star, who also replied almost immediately in chat that Alisson's extension was not a contract extension. It was
mhm.
sort of a trigger within
Thanks,
his
guys.
contract.
Yeah,
Credit
yeah,
to
yeah.
y'all. We cannot leave this call without you mentioning a name who's been mentioned throughout this entire almost 2 hours. Lewandowski.
Yeah, he's one of the.
Is our good friend Robert coming to Torino?
A week ago, I'd said no. Today, I'm saying. The three names that Juventus have been actively targeting in every sense of the word the last week were Alisson, Bernardo Silva, and Lewandowski. These are the three players that they want to bring in to have that experience cemented within the team, even before fixing these minor details, so to speak, if you know what I mean. This is the base that they want to build the rest of the team around, especially Kenan, McKenney. So these are the three that we are targeting. So I'd assume that they're high on the priority list because it would make no sense for Juventus to waste time and money on trying to bring them in. And I could say the same for Lewandowski as I said for Bernardo Silva and Alisson. He's also given his availability. He's very charmed by Juventus, by the project, and by Kenan. He really wants to play alongside Kenan. He thinks he's one of the best up and coming players in the world. And Lewandowski is a guy that, sees himself as a mentor in a lot of things within the locker room, but also on the pitch. So that's something that he very likes. And from what I could tell, this is not from my official source, but it's something my source heard, through the grapevine. But I'm just gonna spill it out. Apparently, Lewandowski had a call with Spalletti already.
Hmm.
So we'll see. But I expect these three names to be dealt with in the positive or negative way within a reasonable time period. So let's see. And I wouldn't hate on Lewandowski. I think he's the kind of player that in Serie A could get him 20 goals easily a season.
You say that,
Uh,
but we really struggle to play around our striker, and that you could easily say that's because the strikers we have stink. But like when you look at the service, a lot of our service is poor. A lot of our balls into the front are poor, and so like my
and
concern is
Bernardo
you
Silva.
well, but you need for getting a 40-year-old striker almost. You need the dominoes to fall into place first, right? And so like for Lewandowski, I'm not really a fan of that move. It's just like you need to fill in the other pieces first, in my mind, before you even consider it.
That's why I
Considering his
think
health, because his age, his health, his mobility, where he is in his career. I mean, it's just
that's why I kept him as last. And I think that this is how Juventus prioritizes things. Bernardo Silva, regardless of anything or anyone else, because he's the guy that you could plug and play into your team, so to speak, with the experience that he has, with the everything that he has, his aura, whatever you want to call it. He's somebody apart from whoever fills the team, you'll have a place for Bernardo Silva within Juventus, which I think is logical to assume. Then you have your goalkeeper, not a priority until it becomes a priority in the sense that you have the opportunity to get a very good world class goalkeeper in for a very reasonable fee. So then your goalkeeper from priority number 7 switches to priority number 2 because
Mhm.
there's this time frame that needs to be dealt with. And then last in the top 3, you have Lewandowski in the sense that hey, if we can get Bernardo Silva in alongside with a Yildiz, who would match perfectly in terms of setting up goals for him, even if you add a bit of Locatelli and McKenney in the mix, it all starts to make sense. So, in my respect, in my humble opinion, I think they're going for Bernardo Silva. If they get that done, even just in a gentleman's agreement, they'll immediately switch to Lewandowski because of the potential match that they could have and the cost. And in between, you try to get in that Alisson type of goalkeeper in order to have that experience and that resilience in goal next season. So from where I'm sitting, it all makes sense. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and you see this in every single sport and every single team, if you bring in a player like Bernardo Silva, then you then turn around to other potential guys on the fence, and you're like, look, this is what we're building. This is who we bagged. You're going to come and be able to play with Bernardo Silva. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, you say Lewandowski wants to play with Keenan. I'm pretty sure he'd be more excited to play with Bernardo Silva,
Not only
right?
that, I think also the fact that you just send a signal out saying, "Hey, you thought that we were over and done with because we bought Gatti, Lloyd Kelly, Koopmeiners, or whoever." Um, we're back here with Bernardo Silva, and that could be the trigger or the catalyst for other players to think, "Hey, if Bernardo Silva goes to Turin, ain't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I might just fit in there and do something and because that's the whole shtick of Juventus or the management at this point, the resurrection. We've had those years where we were sitting in the shadows. We set that fourth place bar there because we knew that that was our ceiling at that point. Now it's time to drop the cloak and say, okay, we're here. It's game time. We're gonna level up a bit. So
Frederic's
It's
stuck in resurrection. He's still in an Easter frame of mind. But I think we've given a little taste as to what you can expect in episodes of The Scoop that we will be doing. We went to do one this week, and we will try to do one soon. I think we do these sort of periodically and outside of transfer windows, and we'll be looking to do one again soon where we kind of go through the big lists that Frederic has questions to. But we can't do it here. We are 2 hours in, and we want to thank each and every one of you who've been with us live. Obviously, everyone tuning in after the fact, that doesn't mean we appreciate you less. We appreciate all of our fans. I personally especially appreciate Frederic, who sits here for 2 hours and does this with me. And
I appreciate you.
For everyone, again, I guess if you haven't liked, subscribed, 5-starred, and all of these sort, please do that. That does help us out. We are planning.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt.
Go right ahead.
I just got a text message. It is very likely that tomorrow we'll have a meeting between Alisson's management and Juventus management, and it could be a decisive one already, in the sense that Alisson said, "I want a Juve move." So
tune in, follow us on Instagram at Turin Giants and The Scoop Juve, because we might do a scoop of the day depending on how that meeting comes out. Stay tuned with us on there. Turin Giants official on YouTube, turingiants.com. Thank you all, Frederic. I know it's really late for you and everyone who's in Europe. It's really late, so we're going to leave it at that. And thanks you all. And until next time, as always, Forza Juve.